Hi, this is Joel Selvin, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast, with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart, weekly music news for the new music business.
From Billboard, record label market share Q3 2023, Republic stays dominant while Interscope and Atlantic surge.
From Music Business Worldwide, 5 observations on Epic Games' sale of Bandcamp to Songtradr.
And from MIDiA, does culture become a commodity or do commodities become culture? As he scratches his head. Well, Jay, let's start the show right now because we've got so much to talk about and we are glad you are all here. So we're going to press the button right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. Standing by. Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Good day to you, my friend. Good to see you on a really hot day here in SoCal, baby. It feels like summer.
Really, really hot. It's going to cool down eventually, but this is sort of our last blast before we get into some cooler weather. And how about that music, that intro music there by Silver Plains?
I like that stuff a lot, and that is it. It's got a 70s feel to it in the best ways. I can't even really describe what it is that makes it sound kind of 70s-ish, but
super
but
melodic.
It does.
You know, more hooks than a tackle box, as they say. That's
yes.
Aaron Smart on lead vocals, Ian Baca on bass and keyboards, and Jesse Kramer, son of Aerosmith's drummer Joey Kramer. He's on drums. And this is really interesting. The album's called Airbus. It's out. The band is Silver Plains. And it was produced by legendary producer Jack Douglas, who, of course, John Lennon, Aerosmith, Cheap Trick. But what I thought was super interesting is it was mixed by Jeff Emmerich. And people will remember Jeff Emmerich worked with the Beatles, of course, Badfinger, Elvis Costello, among others. So a lot of melody here, a lot of talent here. I just love that album.
That must have been one of the last things that Jeff Emmerich did.
It was the last thing that he worked on.
Oh my goodness! And by the way, Jeff Emmerich's book is a must-read. Fantastic book on his career, and by all accounts, it's just a lovely human. And wow, what a treat for an artist to have those two guys.
Can you imagine
behind the console at the console?
Oh my gosh,
like,
legendary.
Wow. Yeah, super cool.
So,
a lot of things coming up, aren't there? A lot of things you would want to go to for sure.
Yeah, a lot of events coming up that you and I have been sort of talking about before we hit record. The Jump Global Annual Summit 2023. That's happening in LA November 12th through the 14th, and that's really personal and professional development for music business humans. And they were kind enough to give our listeners and readers a discount code. So if you want to go to the Jump Global Annual Summit, use the code JGCommunity23 and you'll get $200 off. That's also in your morning coffee, the newsletter. If you don't have anything to write that down with, it's in the newsletter.
And I will put that in the show notes as well, Jay.
Oh, thank you, sir. A couple other conferences that you and I have been talking about. Music Tectonics is coming up really soon, October 24th through 26th in Santa Monica. You and I will be there.
Yes, we will. We will. And I know we've got the Music Business Association Conference coming up May 15th through the 18th of next year, 2024 in Nashville.
I've already booked my hotel and flights.
Good for you.
You want to get ahead of that. So, they're one of our sponsors, and we're big fans as well. One thing I wanted to give a quick plug to is one of my other podcasts, the Music Biz Weekly with Mike Brandvold. We've been doing this for years. I guess we're close to 600 episodes, well over 1 million
amazing,
downloads. Dude. Yeah, it's a beast, and it's really for DIY artists to help kind of guide them on their path. But this week we had an incredible interview with Stacey Bedford. And you may know Stacey Bedford as the CEO of Bandzoogle, but as of about a month ago, she is now the general manager of DistroKid. And it was really cool. We actually, Mike Brandvold and I on Music Biz Weekly, we were her first interview 7 years ago when she became the CEO of Bandzoogle. Wow. And again, Bandzoogle is a sponsor. I've built many websites using Bandzoogle. We'll talk about them in a minute, but it was really a great interview. If you get a chance, check out, I think it drops Monday, Music Biz Weekly interview with Stacey Bedford, who's now part of that DistroKid team. And if you hadn't read in your morning coffee, DistroKid has bought Bandzoogle, so now they're all under the same company, and Stacey is now the GM.
Big congrats to Stacey. That's huge. Good for her.
Yeah. The other thing, just to touch on really quickly, is you saw the news. I know you and I talked about this, that Spotify is going to be giving their paid subscribers 15 hours of audiobook listening, and they're going to do it in Australia and the UK first. The US, I guess, is coming this winter. And I'm a big audiobook fan. I know you are too. But as you read the stories about this week, you find that this giving of 15 hours is only 70% of their bestsellers. And by the way, the average audiobook is about 8 to 12 hours in length. So you basically get one sort of free audiobook out of 150,000 titles. But Daniel Ek says that he thinks that it's a big opportunity for Spotify. He thinks that audiobooks are a $70 billion business at some point. So it'll be really fun to see how this rolls out. And there were some rumors around, I don't know if you heard about this, but with Spotify's upcoming hi-fi, high fidelity tier, they're saying that the users may get up to 30 hours of audiobooks with that. So we'll watch this story as it develops.
Well, and as you and I were speaking, it's like we need to kind of find out really what is the deal with audiobooks in terms of the back. How does that business model work?
Exactly.
And I don't know the answer to that, but I know people that might, and so we're going to try to get some answers about that, and we'll bring back some information.
Yeah, my favorite thing about that, Mike, on these audiobooks is a lot of times it's the author reading their own book.
Yes.
And you get humor.
Can be good, can be bad.
Yeah. But, you get humor that you don't get sometimes when you're reading the physical book. And it's pretty cool. And we've talked about some of them, like the Bono book, which is so good because he's so charming and it's him reading it. But then each chapter starts with music, which is really difficult to get that cleared, but they did, and it's so amazing. But anyway, that's sort of what's going on the audiobook side. And in your morning coffee this week, I recommended a new book by Howie Singer and Bill Rosenblatt. It's called Key Changes: The 10 Times Technology Transformed the Music Industry. And you and I should walk through some of these that you and I consider to be some of our favorite books. That this book is certainly in that class.
Well, and I will start that by saying when you and I first met at Universal, one of the things I noticed when I walked into your office was that you had some of the same books I had in my office, which was huge. And of course, the first one, which you and I got the first edition of, and I think we've both have every edition since, is Donald Passman's All You Need to Know About the Music Business. And there is a new edition coming soon. That has been, I can't tell you how many times I pulled that off my shelf and just looked up something, and it's such a wonderful resource.
Yeah, and he's coming. He's going to join us on the podcast.
Yeah.
Donald Passman is.
Hardly wait.
We're just working out the details right now. He's got a new edition of the book, edition number 11, coming in a couple of weeks, and 10 we talked about on the podcast because it had so much new information, about AI and Web3 and just everything. I mean, I don't know anybody in the music industry really that doesn't have that book on their shelves, but like you said, we check all of those out. I just finished reading. I got an advance copy of the new book, and I can't wait for you and I to talk to Donald when he comes on the show.
Yes, absolutely. We also have the Brabeck Brothers, Music, Money, and Success, The Insider's Guide to Making Money in the Music Business. Another great book, another must-have.
Such a great book. It shows you all these ways to monetize. And one of my all-time favorite books about the music industry is from our friend Steve Knopper. And Steve wrote the book Appetite for Self-Destruction. If you haven't read that one, it's a good one.
A must-read. Mike Warner's Work Hard, Playlist Hard, another absolutely fantastic book you must have.
Yep, we've had him on the show, as well as Ari Herstand. His book is How to Make It in the New Music Business. And, and now we have this. And again, the book that we just got that we love is Key Changes: The 10 Times Technology Transformed the Music Industry. And the last thing I'll say on it really quickly is just the first 2 chapters giving you sort of a history lesson on the music industry and formats and changes is worth the price of admission. So Howie and Bill are going to be joining us on the podcast soon, and we'll have a great conversation. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh darn it. It's we love the books, it's so fun and informational. And I think you and I might have mentioned this before on the podcast, but when you start in the music business, if you're working in the music business, nobody sits you down really and gives you the backstory of how that company or whatever got there. And I've learned so much about the companies that I've worked for through the books that I've read, because 100%. You never get that download, and it's just so interesting. So
yeah. Well, before we move into these other things, just a quick shout out to a couple of our favorites. We talk about Bobby Borg and Bobby Owsinski quite a bit. Man, there's just so many great books and not enough time to mention them all. But if you go, Google Bobby Borg or Bobby Owsinski, there's some really, really great books there. And before we jump into our stories, you and I were talking about one of our favorite newsletters, which is The Ledger by Glenn Peoples over at Billboard, which you can subscribe to for free. And he talks a little bit about how people may be underestimating, the power of Taylor Swift and just her unique place in the business world.
Yeah, he starts by saying, for as much has been said and written about Taylor Swift in recent years, there's a chance people have been underestimating the 33-year-old musician's unique place in the business world. Swift's prowess as a recording artist and songwriter is well known as the most popular artist in the U.S. across several consumption metrics. She has 11.7 million equivalent album units, EAUs.
And we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, through September 21st, about 70% more than the number 2 artist Morgan Wallen, according to Luminate. Check that out. 70% more than the number 2 artist.
Right. And when you drop something like equivalent album units, you and I like to remind people what that means. EAUs convert streams to track sales into album units. Right. So we call it SEA, streaming equivalent albums. And the Billboard 200 includes 2 tiers for sort of, tracking on-demand audio streams. Tier 1 is paid. Tier 2 is ad-supported because they're not worth the same, right? So correct. Tier 1, those paid subscription audio streams, that equates to 1,250 streams to 1 album unit, right? And then on Tier 2, the ad-supported, it's more. It's 3,750 streams to 1 album unit. Just wanted to remind folks.
Exactly. Well, and Taylor also has the highest album sales, physical album sales, digital track sales, on-demand audio streams, and airplay spins so far in 2023. Yeah. Not to mention, a few people have seen that live show, just a couple.
Oh my goodness. And then the movie coming out. I mean,
she is on. I mean, a really unprecedented almost when you think about everything she's accomplished this year and in her career. It's absolutely stunning.
Yeah,
stunning.
It really is. And again, we always watch the Ledger, the newsletter, subscribe to it for free. Always really great stuff in there from Glenn Peoples. So thank you.
We love that.
Thank you, Glenn.
And speaking of love, Jay, how about our sponsors? We must thank our sponsors because we are so appreciative of everything they do for us to help put the show together. Yeah,
let's kick it off by thanking our friends over at Bandzoogle. Built by musicians for musicians. Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build a beautiful website and EPK for your music. All the features that you need for a professional website, everything is built right in. Things like hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send newsletters, social media integrations, and live support from their it's easy for you to say, their musician-friendly team. 7 days a week. Your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com, try it for free for 30 days. Just use a promo code MORNINGCOFFEE, all one word, and that will get you 15% off your first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code MORNINGCOFFEE.
And the YMC podcast is also sponsored by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It is edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Yes, sir. Bands in Town. Over 80 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform connecting over 590,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
And we are also sponsored by the Music Business Association. The Music Business Association hosts an annual slate of in-person and virtual events so industry professionals across the globe can come together to discuss hot-button issues and support the growth of the entire music business community. Join us for the Music Biz 2024 conference, May 13 through 16 at the JW Marriott in Nashville, Tennessee. And Jay Gilbert will be there and buying the drinks. Big thanks to Bandzoogle, Hypebot, Bands in Town, and the Music Business Association. We certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, we do.
And I get to hang out with my buddy Jay Gilbert. He is a music industry consultant. He is the curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with Universal Music. Sony Music and Warner Music Groups. And man, he is up late and up early when he gets that newsletter out. And it is a fabulous resource.
Well, coffee helps. And this gentleman sitting across from me, one of my favorite people on the planet, Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group.
Yes, indeed. And let's jump into the stories, Jay. The first one from Billboard. Record label market share Q3 of 2023. Republic stays dominant while Interscope and Atlantic surge.
Yeah, this is a really, really deep dive. It's so good. It was written by Dan Rice over at Billboard. And there's some really great charts in here. Not only on market share, but then they kind of drill down. So you see the market share of like the music group, and then you see each individual label. The market share graph looks like a donut, and I'll probably take those as we move forward and let you kind of talk about some of the highlights. But just to kick it off, this year has been defined by consistency at the top of the charts, and one record label has led in current market share in each of the first three quarters, and that's Republic Records, which has a 12.28% of the market share through September 28th, and that's according to Luminate, right? So that's a negligible drop from last quarter's 12.46%, and more than 4 percentage points higher than the 8.77% share the label had for the same period last year.
That's right. You may wonder how they got there. Well, much like the year overall, it's been headlined by the massive Morgan Wallen album One Thing at a Time, which has racked up more than 4.5 million equivalent album units since its March debut. And that new breaking artist Taylor Swift's prolific release schedule, which not only includes her latest collection of new tracks, Midnights, but also the release of Speak Now, Taylor's version. Both are among the top 10 albums of the year so far. Republic's share also includes Island, Big Loud, Mercury, Cash Money, and indie distributor Imperial.
That's right. Morgan Wallen's dominance is so big that his label Big Loud would rank 8th among all labels on its own with a 2.69% current market share if it were broken out from Republic. That's incredible. With both One Thing at a Time and his latest release, Dangerous, the double album, both counting towards current share. Current is defined as albums released within the past 18 months and have remained in the top half of the Billboard 200. So I'm going to kick off the market share, and you can kind of drill down into some of the highlights. But if you look at just overall music group market share, you've got Universal Music Group at a little over 38% market share, which is massive. Sony Music Group, a little over 27%. Warner Music Group with almost 19%. And then the indies, this is a pretty big market share. The indies are almost 16% market share. So I thought, for music groups, yes, Universal's leading the pack. But indies are doing well. Everybody's sort of, doing well.
Yeah, remarkable. Coming in at a comfortable second place with big third quarter releases from Olivia Rodrigo and New Jeans was Interscope, Geffen A&M, which hit a high mark for the year so far with an 8.55% current share, which is a half-point increase over its mid-year mark. It's down from 9.23 current share posted at the third quarter mark of 2022, but it's a strong showing in a year in which Republic has vacuumed up, as they say, so much market share. And IGA's share also includes the Verve label group, so it's interesting to see kind of how they break that down.
Yeah, and the top sort of 5 there for these labels, the Interscope, Geffen A&M that you just mentioned, IGA. Number 2 is Republic, number 3 Atlantic, number 4 Capital, and number 5 Warner Records. And it's, obviously this is release driven, but what amazes me is year after year, it's the same 5 to 10 labels that are consistently fighting for those spots. Their A&R teams are world-class because they keep breaking and developing artists.
Right. Well, and again, you look at the dominance of all of the Universal Music Group labels. It's pretty stunning when you look at their market share. So,
yeah.
Big numbers,
Yeah.
encouraging, and wow, those top two artists, how much they dominate the charts.
Yeah, and we talked about overall market share, and then we described, what current means. And if you look at the current versus overall, it's really not that different, other than the fact that indies have a much larger market share when it comes to just measuring current, 18 months or less. That market share is over 20%. So really impressive on the indie front. And then the other part of this we should talk about is catalog, right? Take a look at the catalog market share and how these labels are doing it. And remember, catalog is 75% of the business. So this is meaningful revenue.
Right. They say how factoring in back catalog to look at overall market share shakes up the top two. Interscope takes the top spot with 9.57, besting Republic's 9.49% by a shade over 500,000 units, though through the first three quarters, with Atlantic in third at 8.31%. That's due to the deeper catalog of Interscope, Geffen, A&M, and Atlantic. They're number 1 and 2 in catalog-only share. And Republic finished third at 8.54%. So catalog huge, and it kind of depends again on the depth of your catalog and how that shakes out.
So if you look at the music groups, just on catalog, their market share, Universal Music Group over 39%. That's massive, just because of all the revenue that's there, right? And then Sony Music Group, a little over 27%. Warner Music Group, about 19%, and the indies right in there at a little over 14% market share when it comes to catalog, which they include is over 18 months old. So really interesting piece by Dan Rise, and it's always fun to sort of look at the market share from all of these labels.
Yep, doing really, really well. This next one, Jay, super interesting. From Music Business Worldwide, 5 observations on Epic Games' sale of Bandcamp to Songtradr. Yeah. And that went down just fairly recently.
Yeah, and there were 3 stories in your morning coffee this week about this. Different takes on it. I really liked the Music Business Worldwide piece. This is by Murray Stassen. We're just such big fans of Music Business Worldwide and Murray's, of course. And he kicks it off by saying that Songtradr got the entire music business talking last week with the news that it's the new owner of prominent D2C and merch buying platform, Bandcamp, and D2C, direct to consumer, for those that don't know. Bandcamp was acquired by Songtradr from Epic Games, and that's the maker of hit video game Fortnite, for example. And that was just after 18 months after Epic itself acquired Bandcamp. So Epic's divestiture, that's easy for you to say, of Bandcamp arrived alongside the news that the gaming giant is laying off around 16% of its global workforce. So a lot of news this week on this Songtradr acquisition of Bandcamp.
But their take on this really was 5 observations about what the deal means for Songtradr, Bandcamp, and other players in the music industry, and kind of offering some interesting questions, like number 1. Why didn't one of the majors buy Bandcamp? And, as he says, as a music store with what it says is a community of over 5 million artists and labels, Bandcamp is a key player in the independent direct-to-consumer or D2C market. Plus, with over a decade in the D2C business, Bandcamp owns a gold mine of data around the buying trends and behaviors of superfans. And boy, you and I have talked about superfans so much over the last couple of weeks and how important superfans are in terms of sales. So one group of music vendors especially excited by the lucrative potential of superfans in the streaming era is, of course, the 3 major music companies. Yet for whatever reason, perhaps one of price, Universal Music Group, Sony Music Group, and Warner Music Group were evidently not interested in acquiring Bandcamp to boost their own D2C businesses, nor their increasingly large presence in the world of independent artist companies like ADA and AWOL and The Orchard. Interesting question to ask. Why not? Why did they not consider that? And who knows?
And let's look at question number 2. Why didn't Spotify buy Bandcamp? So why didn't they? You know, think about it. Spotify could have acquired its very own D2C merch selling platform with a superfan-centric user base and integrate it directly into Spotify for artists. Spotify currently offers artists the ability to sell their merch on their profiles via a partnership with Shopify, of course. Artists can also list merch via Merch Bar on Spotify, but Bandcamp could have offered Spotify so much more. In the press release announcing its acquisition of Songtradr, Bandcamp is claimed to be a, quote, music store and community with over 5 million artists and labels. Spotify could have learned a lot from the data around the platform's user base of fans, artists, and labels to inform editorial decisions, research and development for new features, not to mention giving artists a native platform to list and sell their merch. So I love those first two questions. You know, why didn't a major acquire it? Why didn't Spotify acquire it?
Well, and then turning the question around, he said, number 3, what was Epic Games thinking by buying a D2C music platform in the first place? Epic Games is very good at making and marketing games. So good, in fact, that it confirmed that its flagship title, Fortnite, counted over 350 million registered users in 2020.
Cow.
In 2021, that number jumped to 400 million. In addition to Fortnite, Epic Games is the developer behind the Unreal Engine, a powerful 3D creation tool that offers photorealistic graphics. Around 3 years ago, Epic Games started getting a bit closer to the music business, serving as a popular virtual platform for performance space for major stars, while its Unreal Engine platform formed the building blocks for 3D music videos created by Sony Music, immersive music studios. Then in March 2020, Epic bought Bandcamp, announcing in a statement at the time that BC was set to play an important role in its vision to build out a creator marketplace ecosystem for content, technology, games, art, music, and more.
You know, a lot of people thought that was an odd mix, and there were a lot of stories about that. And this piece is so good because he digs into all of these areas, and we could talk for hours, you know, about the gaming side. But number 4 was Tencent and Sony, but especially Tencent, just became even more powerful in the music business, right? So one point mentioned in the press release announcing the news of Songtradr's Bandcamp acquisition is that via the deal, Epic Games just became an investor in Songtradr. So according to the press release, Epic Games is investing in Songtradr to support Bandcamp's successful integration into the music platform's new owner. It's worth taking a look at who owns Epic Games at present to see why that's significant news in and of itself. One significant stakeholder in Epic Games is China-headquartered technology giant Tencent. Tencent Holdings, the owner of Tencent Music Entertainment. We talk about them all the time. So Tencent, you know, has a 20% stake in Universal Music Group. It also owns stakes in Spotify, Warner Music Group, and a JV label based in Hong Kong, Liquid State. So I thought that was a really interesting take as well.
Well, and it gets even more confusing. Tencent owns around 40% of the North Carolina headquartered Epic via a $330 million investment made in 2012. Meanwhile, in April of last year, Epic Games confirmed that Japan-headquartered Sony Corporation had agreed to spend $1 billion to acquire an additional stake in its company. When you talk about all the money in this thing, it's amazing. This article specifically talks about it's amazing how much Tencent has gone to all of these different companies and basically bought stakes.
They have their tentacles all over the music. They're a beast, and we talk about them quite a bit. Number 5, let's talk about Songtradr is now a serious B2C player in addition to being a prominent B2B player. Business to consumer is B2C, and business to business is B2B, for those that don't know. Last but definitely not least is what the deal means for Songtradr's own positioning in the global music business. The Santa Monica-based music company, led by CEO and founder Paul Whitshire, who they have a picture of him in the article here, has been active in expanding its portfolio through strategic acquisitions over the past few years. But this latest deal marks a significant shift in the type of company Songtradr has targeted.
Songtradra's strategic move into the increasingly important direct-to-fan space promises to be positive news for the actual artists who use Bandcamp. Songtradr said in its press release last week that it will also offer Bandcamp artists the ability and choice to have their music licensed to all forms of media, including content creators, game and app developers, and brands. The company added that this will enable artists to continue to own and control their music rights and increase their earning capacity from Songtradra's global licensing network.
Yeah,
so,
and for those that don't know, just really quickly as we end this piece, is that Songtradr specializes in licensing fully cleared music for sync to a range of clients, including the likes of Disney, Netflix, Apple, Coca-Cola, Amazon, and Columbia Pictures. So, they're also the official TikTok sound partner. And from their website, it says, through flexible monthly, yearly, or project-based licensing plans, we enable brands and creators to develop sound-on strategies for TikTok. So this is an incredible development this week and just a fantastic piece. We're just kind of skimming it, but if you really want to do a deep dive, 5 observations on Epic Games' sale of Bandcamp to Songtradr, written by Murray Stassen over at Music Business Worldwide. Fantastic piece.
And when I read about it, this reminds me of, it's probably been going on now 30 years. Both the music business and the gaming business has always looked at each other across the pond, so to speak, and said, our businesses are so similar. I should be in that business, and each of them saying that. And I was part of that at the Warner Music Group and their sort of failed attempt at doing gaming. And there's always been this kind of attraction between the two industries, that they are similar, but they are also very, very different.
Yeah.
And it's usually, historically speaking, it has been a rough road when a gaming company or a music company buys the other, and find out that really it's different cultures, it is different technologies, and oftentimes it just does not work. So we will see. Well, we shall see.
The one thing that jumped out at me was, you were talking about they're expecting the number of Fortnite users to jump to 400 million people.
It's crazy.
It's a beast.
It is a beast. Well, I hope it works out well for all involved.
Yeah.
But like I said, there is a long history of these things not working out sometimes. So our number 3 story, Jay, is from MIDiA. Does culture become a commodity, or do commodities become culture?
This is such a great piece, written by Hannah Collart. We've covered her work before, and listeners of this program know that we're huge fanboys of MIDiA and the team over there. This is just another really interesting piece. And I learned things not only from their reports, but they sort of dig into different angles that I hadn't really thought about. And I'll just kick this one off. Hannah starts with, she said, more than 3/4 of audiences believe that the music they listen to reflects who they are. This rises to more than 4/5 of people aged 25 to 44. It reflects who they are. Music listening is also incredibly personal. Roughly 1/3 of people listen to playlists that they curate themselves for exercising, hanging out with friends, working, or studying, or just when they're out and about.
Yet so many of the way music discovery is being pushed is an attempt to remove the ability to self-curate. Radio stations and discover playlists that pass and disappear with no fandom or affinity generated as a result. Spotify's day list is just an extension of this removal of choice from the hands of audiences. The inevitability of AI-generated music to fill these playlists and stations will make it worse. Such a reality would be good in a way for streaming services who can lower their music licensing costs by generating their own music. But needless to say, this does not bode well for musical cultural moments.
No, and we hadn't really thought of it in terms of cultural moments, but as Hannah points out, music is integral to culture. From early humans with drums to elaborate Romance-era sonatas, to the counterculture electronic beats of house music in the 80s, the most powerful artists are not just observers, but live and breathe the moments of time that they can then turn into melodies that last decades, if not centuries. Ask Mozart.
The same goes for visual storytelling. From Shakespeare's rowdy plays to 60s sitcoms to the rise of Star Wars, these stories had something to say about the cultures that gave rise to them, which nevertheless were rooted in timeless human truths.
Yeah. She goes on to point out that, what cultural highlights represent the quote unquote soul of our world today. In film, concentrated efforts to regenerate these sorts of moments has resulted in historical biopics like Oppenheimer and a questioning of our social roles under capitalism, Barbie. In music, a few names may spring to mind, but most predate the 2020s and harken back to the 10s.
She says this is not because culture isn't happening. It is because it is being commodified so early in its life cycle, it does not have time to really take hold. Commodification is becoming culture in a double-edged, subversive sort of way. TikTok is inextricable from the identity of Gen Z with the rise of social, e-commerce, and an oversaturated digital space wherein everyone is competing for likes, comments, shares, and sponsorships. People have begun to commodify themselves through their social media presence.
And that says it all. I mean, that paragraph is, there's a lot to that. And it's really important to sort of recognize how things are shifting. But she says that's the culture now. And it's largely, although not exclusively, a second order impact of streaming. Streaming stripped the intrinsic value from entertainment and made it simply about more, be it TV shows or songs. The pressure for more stuff more often leaves none of it enough time to permeate and generate any kind of cultural momentum. I hadn't really thought of it like this before. This is super interesting. The commodification of culture has resulted in a culture of commodity, wherein the big things are no longer happening on TV screens and stages, but rather in viral moments that pass across social platforms created and distributed by consumers themselves and leaving established entertainment to play catch-up.
She says for culture, this is simply an evolution, albeit perhaps a mildly tragic one reflecting circumstance. For entertainment, this should be considered as a threat. The music industry in particular is largely one entity that has grown up around people who would be doing music anyway and just needed a way to make a living out of it. But this noble underpinning is fading as so much of the industry focuses on just being another content machine to drive up metrics on digital platforms. Rather than being at the cutting edge of culture, the industry is increasingly chasing it to catch up.
That is so true. That part about, the content machine to drive up metrics on digital platforms, it's the bane of the industry right now, in my humble opinion. In the end, culture can be commodified, but only after it's already established. The creative industries used to allow this leeway in the form of artist development and waiting for impact before signing and giving boosts in the right place at the right time. But now, with the speed of production and the hype cycle at such a breakneck pace, it's no longer part of the consideration in commercial viability.
She says more than any specific strategy, this priority first needs to change. Art should come first, followed by culture, and then commodification can follow in its wake as an economic backing. To lead with the need to make money is killing the actual value of the thing being monetized. Wow. Is that the future the music industry really wants for itself? Is it even a sustainable one? To ensure the cultural foundation that makes the industry viable long term, taking a step away from the content hype storm of more and back into the realm of why is something that the entire music industry value chain needs to do. While it may seem a risky break from the status quo, it is a long-term investment in not only the future of music and entertainment, but of culture itself. Boy, that's deep and interesting and fascinating.
Yeah, I had to read this a couple of times, and I highlighted some things because there's a lot of great insights in there. So again, if you want to read the full piece, it's in your morning coffee this last week. It's from Hannah Collart over at MIDiA. And once again, the headline is, Does Culture Become a Commodity, or Do Commodities Become Culture? I love the way they take a look at the business. It's not something I would have considered.
No, exactly. But on that note, Jay, it's time to go out into the heat and wrap up this episode 165 of the Your Morning Coffee podcast. We want to thank everyone for listening. We also want to thank our sponsors, because without them, we could not do the show. We do want to thank our good friends over at Bandzoogle, Hypebot, Bands in Town, and the Music Business Association. And with that, Jay, let's call it a day. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will see you next time on the Your Morning Coffee podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.